You're listening to Crazy Shit in Real Estate. You'll be amazed at all these wild but true situations that others have found themselves in. Because on this show, you'll hear uncensored, unbelievable stories from the world of real estate. I'm Leigh Brown. Let's dive right in. Before you get the rest of the story, I'd love to share a quick message from today's sponsor. Hey, y'all, just going to take a quick break from this conversation to let you know about the sponsor of today's episode. That sponsor is, well, frankly, it's me. It's Leigh Brown University. Look, it's no secret that real estate is crazy competitive, getting more so every day. And when the pie doesn't get any bigger, but the people wanting a piece of it do, you've got to figure out a competitive advantage. And that's why I created Leigh Brown University. It's everything you need from soup to nuts, cradle to grave, point A to point B, whatever point B is. Each of you has different goals. So maybe you're a new to the career realtor, or you're a super experienced pro who can't figure out that next level. There's something in my course that's going to help you break through. It's designed for you before I even met you. So enroll in Leigh Brown University today. You go to www.leighbrownu.com. and I'll see you there. Now, back to this amazing content. All right, well, thank you for coming on the show. I'm excited to hear from you and talk a little bit about the crazy world of real estate.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited as well.
So the first thing I have to ask is, are you related to Barbara? Because, Mandrell is a really famous last name. And are y'all cousins or what?
I get this all the time. That's my auntie.
You know what? I would claim her because, she belongs to the Grand Ole Opry. That's no small thing.
Right. Exactly. No relation. She killed my SEO, though. Anytime you search for me, you have to put in Willie or Barbara comes right up. So
look, my name is an Australian rugby player, and he was a big-time pro and big in the fantasy leagues. I still can't get on page 1 of Google because
right. Exactly. You have to Google. You have to attach real estate. It's Willie Mandrell real estate, and then I pop up on the first page.
So tell us, where is Willie Mandrell Real Estate? Where do you practice? How long have you been in the business? What kind of skinny do you have for us?
Sure. 15 years in the business, been in Boston all my life, grew up here, invest here, want to continue to be here, and real estate investor developer. So I own a brokerage as well. I started off kind of back in 2000 and let's call it 6, bought my first multifamily, got my real estate license, did some sales, opened up my own brokerage. Hated the brokerage business, started doing development, and now I basically go in and buy pieces of property that needed a ton of work. And that's one of the things I was going to mention to you today, fix them up and then just hold on to them.
Okay, so I want to dive into that for 2 seconds, because in about one breath, you gave away so many of the pathways in real estate. And I think that's one of the craziest things about this profession that the public doesn't understand, because they think real estate, they picture the realtor who dresses up and shows houses and does the residential typical real estate piece, but you've mentioned the brokerage side and the development side, and then you're talking about the value add side, and you're an investor, and all of that in the space of 15 years, when in most professions you may make 1 or 2 moves up a ladder. Real estate's like a golden corral of
it is, and you see opportunities all over the place, and the hardest thing about being in real estate is staying focused for any period of time. That's really the hardest thing.
That's such an understatement. Okay, so thinking of focus, when you're looking at value add, and by the way, listeners and viewers, when Willie and I talk about value add, we're talking about the properties that you see that some might call an eyesore, some might say they are dilapidated, they've got deferred maintenance, but basically a value add property is one that needs an investor to go bring the value back by doing some kind of investment in the property. It's not perfection like you would see on HGTV. But with the focus piece, it doesn't matter what the market conditions are. And you and I both know this because we've lived through several different market conditions. There's always houses that need somebody to love on them. So when you're trying to focus, are you focused on the area something's located in, or is it the sheer numbers? Is it the margin? Are you a hold guy, or do you fix it up and find somebody else to love on it? Give us a little bit of insight from the mind of an experienced investor.
Sure. I think you always have to have your niche, right? I think that's where most people go wrong in this business is they fall in love with anything and everything, just anywhere. I'm guilty of it as well. There's a couple of, I've lost $80,000 on a particular, condo conversion or a project just because I went to a neighborhood. I grew up Boston South. I, saw a golden nugget on the North Shore. A friend pulled me over. I went over there and we lost a bunch of money because I didn't know the market. I was overbuilding for the market. So you really have to develop your niche in real estate, whether you're an investor, whether you're an agent, whether you're a broker. So for me, when I say I'm an investor in Boston, I don't even touch all of Boston. There's about 20 different neighborhoods within the city of Boston, Boston proper. I really only focus on 3 of those. And within those 3 neighborhoods, I only focus on one type of property, and that's the residential 3 and 4 unit building for the most part. So really kind of narrowing in, establishing that niche I think is key to, any type of success in this business.
Okay, so Willie, we know a lot of our listeners and viewers are newer to real estate, whether they are the general public that's trying to figure out how they can do what you do. How do I be like Willie? Or they're realtors who say, come on, that sounds great to work 3 neighborhoods, but how can you make a living in a tiny geographic area? What would you say to people who think they have to have the broadest of broad approaches? Because you've obviously, when you work that niche, there's a limited market space, but you're highly successful. So what insight can you give to that?
You want to be a big fish in a small pond, not a small fish in a big pond. That's just the way it is, right? So within my particular niche, again, I guess if you maybe some
episode right there just happened. We're calling this the big
right. That's the goal, is big fish, small pond. And if you're dominating a certain area, then you're going to be successful anyway. And it's scary to most people. Most people don't want to do that because they're thinking about the outside and they're saying, well, I'm losing business out here, or I'm not taking this opportunity. Sometimes success is about what you turn down and not what you agree to, right? Or what you stay away from and not what you move towards. And that's what I try to focus on. Sometimes I get, there's every couple of years I'll go into a new market because it'll be a new shiny object there or something like that. And I'll end up pulling back and going right back to my niche because it's what I knew. And here's the thing that I would say in addition to that is, in order to really make money, to really have success, you have to get to expert level, right? You can't know 60% of it and get bored and start moving other places. Real money, real wealth is built in that knowledge base. And hopefully this makes sense, from 80 to 85, the incremental increase from 85 to 90 to 90%. When you start to hit that level of knowledge and understanding of your craft, you really start to make money because the competition is not going to get there and you're able to weed out the competition. I'm able to go into properties in my niche. I'll give you a perfect example. If you give me an address in the neighborhood of Dorchester right now, I don't need to see the property. I can tell you almost to the dollar what it's worth, how much it'll sell for. If you say, hey, it's a 3-family on Stevens Street in Dorchester, and it's roughly 3,300 square feet, I can make you a $650,000 offer right now without having to see it. Don't need to go there. Don't need to visit the place. I'll tell you exactly what I'll put into it and what it'll be worth on the other end of the day. And if you're my competition and you have to do deal analysis for 3 days and call this person and walk through with your contractor and get the bank to take a look at it, I've already locked it up and put it under contract and moved on with the property while you're still doing your due diligence. So that's the benefit of really understanding your niche.
Okay, so obviously if somebody's in the general public, they would want to connect to somebody like you because they're not going to have that knowledge. But if somebody is a burgeoning investor or a real estate professional that says, I want to be like Willie, I want that 90% level of knowledge, where did it come from? What were your resources? We know in real estate, part of the key is to be the source of the source as you're building that knowledge base. How did you start building that encyclopedia in your brain?
Sure. And this is, again, it comes back down to having that established niche, because one of the things that I do, I hate to actually admit this, but I'm actually addicted to, I don't buy a lot of properties off the MLS, but I spend a lot of time on the MLS. So it's one of the first things I do when I wake up in the morning is I get that 5 a.m. email that comes in, and it basically says, I'm not looking at just what's on the market. I'm also looking at what's sold within the market as well. So if you're an investor out there, tell your agent, whoever's sending you those listing emails, to turn on what's sold in the market as well, because that's just as important in understanding what's going on in your particular neighborhood. So every morning when I wake up, I'm looking at what's newly listed in my market and what's also been taken off the market. And then what price did it sell for? Because that continued education is giving me an understanding of how do I maneuver and how do I make offers so aggressively, so quickly without having to see anything. And it's also the first thing I'm doing before, when I'm watching TV and I'm kind of zoning out, I'm also scrolling through MLS, looking at what's going on in my particular market as well. And then from there, it's just, even when I didn't have the opportunity, I didn't have the cash, or I didn't have the resources to buy something, I'm still attending open houses. I'm walking through, I'm shaking hands with realtors. I'm letting them know who I am. Even when I had my real estate license, I'm still putting on my investor hat, and I'm, shaking hands with real estate agents and saying, hey, if you bring something to me, I understand that I'm a real estate agent. I'm not interested in co-broking. I want the actual property itself. I want you to look at me as your buyer, and just getting to know the players in the neighborhoods, the wholesalers, the other agents, the brokers. I'm going to every networking event that I possibly could, and meeting and shaking hands, any seminar or any webinar that's, focused on real estate. I'm just constantly educating. The books that you see in the back, there are about 75 of them, right? Right there, just on random business, real estate, marketing. And that's the thing that I would add to that is real estate is not just about, right? You can buy The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, great book, but it's only talking about real estate. What you need is a little bit on sales. You need a little bit on marketing, a little bit on management, on property management, on social media, just everything that goes around running and operating a successful business.
So basically, you're just a real estate addict. Let's just.
That's really what it comes down to. That's really what it comes down to.
It gets in your system to where you can't help but read the next news article because you're thinking, man, this could impact my decisions in the future.
Right.
What's happening over here that's outside of real estate that's going to have an impact on real estate? It's like Wayne Gretzky with that best quote ever. Why was he so good at hockey? He said, because he skates where the puck is going. And that's what a successful investor is doing. Now, I know that my audience is wanting you to talk for days and give them all the secrets. And of course, they can't have all your secrets. But here on Crazy Shit in Real Estate, we love to talk about the things that you discover, find out, learn, experience that were completely unexpected. And you're thinking, this is out of left field, but here we are. So what do we do? You've got a million different angles you've covered in real estate, which means you've seen a billion different crazy scenarios. So I'd love to know, if somebody says, Willie, what's the wildest thing you've seen in living through real estate? What's the story you would tell?
If you really want to know, I mean, it's kind of gross. It's kind of a gross story. So
you try and one up all the other episodes, because if that's where we're going, I'm all in.
Okay. So, here at Boston's an old city, right? And most of our buildings are, 100 years old. Everything was built in 1910, 1920. So you're used to seeing old buildings. And we have, I would say there's a regular mice problem or a mouse problem in Boston. And, tiny little mice get into your house, especially when it gets cold, wintertime comes around. When I was growing up, roaches, or I didn't even know they exist anymore. So we bought this piece of property, and to say it was an infestation would be not doing it justice. I mean, when you walked in, it was wallpaper. It was just everything all over the place. I mean, I literally went home and showered, took off my clothes at the door, and so this property was going on the market and no one would buy it. They were initially asking about $350,000 for it. It was so bad that people couldn't even walk in. You would get in the door and you would just see like the wall move, and it was just roaches just everywhere. It was just. So
they were like sticking to the wall, like they walked up there and hung out?
So when you see it, and like if you've ever seen and this is just my reference for the movies, when you see roaches in the movies, they're somebody opens up the refrigerator and they scatter across the floor. They're using these roaches were not running from anyone. They were this was their territory. They lived there. It was one of the worst situations I've ever seen. But long story short, I bought the house. And I bought the house, and they initially were asking for $300,000. And we ended up, no one would take this thing. Everybody that went in there, they were arguing. They were like, no, we're not taking your offer, blah, blah. We ended up buying the house for $200,000, $100,000 less than what they were asking for. I can tell you that two families of that size in Boston today typically go for somewhere around $600,000. So it was a significant discount. And we basically been in there and just burned the place down. I mean, it was so bad. We essentially went in and just took the foundation, took everything down to the studs. We spent about $300,000 fixing it up. And then I'll tell you a secret. We're only going to relieve this on this podcast. We sprayed, we did everything else. We had about 6 different treatments that came in while the house was existing, before the demo came in, after the demo came in. And then we kept it as a rental property. And within 2 weeks of us being there, the tenant called us up and said we had spotted a roach. We immediately went out and, put the house on the market and said, we're not going to deal with this anymore.
they say that the only thing that could survive nuclear war is roaches.
That's exact. And I never believed. I mean, we had 2 different companies for a total of 6 different treatments. They each came in 3 different times in various phases of the project. We had put everything back in there. I mean, when I say gutted, we took it down to the absolute studs. There was nothing but a foundation and the exterior walls.
Really? Where were they living?
And that's what blows my mind. It was almost like they were burrowed into the studs at some point. It was just a complete 4,000 square foot shell sitting there. And I'm like, there's no way that they survived this. And they absolutely did. And they came back. I'm not sure of the status today, but I can tell you that we made a healthy profit on it. Like I said, we bought it for $200, put about $300,000 into the thing. After realtor fees and everything else, I think we walked away with $200,000. But I'm just itching, just even talking to you about.
I'm just thinking, I'm never going near studs again, because if they can
It was absolutely incredible to me, and like I said, it was something that I'll never forget. And when I go into houses now, and and people are like, "Well, I just want to caution you. I'm please, guy, please,
you got nothing.
Please, this is absolutely nothing. I mean, so."
But my reference point, you think about the horror movies with roaches. You're about my age. Do you remember MTV had that short Joe's Apartment? Do you remember?
I think so. I remember something.
Friends with the roaches, and they would like.
I do.
This date. So
I do.
Happy roaches, but these are not happy roaches.
These were very angry in the process of being evicted roaches, and they were not happy with me. And one of the scariest things is the fear of bringing them home. I mean, they will crawl. Into your boots, the cuff of your pants, whatever else, and you're like. So believe me, there is a serious fear of them attaching to your clothing or something like that, and then now you have a existing problem in your home as well. So. Yeah, one of the nastiest situations I've been in, and I'm still blown away that I actually bought the property. I'm not sure that I would actually do that again.
Well, it's because you bought it right. So let's get off the road story, because I can't.
Okay,
yeah, So back to what you were saying, though, and one of the really big misconceptions in real estate, as you know, is a lot of people think you make money on real estate when you sell it, but you never make money when you sell it. You make it when you buy it. And so you found a way to buy that correctly, and you bought something nobody else wanted. So we're in a market. We're recording this in April of 2021. So whenever you happen to listen to this episode, friends, because I know y'all find it at different times and you binge. When you find this episode, you should know we're in the hottest of hot, insanely stupid, frothy markets.
Right.
Even in a frothy market, are you seeing properties like this out there, Willie, that need your vision beyond what is happening currently?
There are always opportunities. It doesn't matter what market you're in. There are always opportunities to get in. There are always people who, not taking care of their property. There are always people who have inherited properties that they don't want. They live in San Francisco. They inherited a property from their mother or father in Boston. And they're like, I've never been to Boston. I don't want to go to Boston. I have no, desire to live in cold. Yeah, I mean, there are always opportunities to get in. I'm still finding properties. It's an inverse relationship between properties and financing, right? When there's a plethora of deals, that means the market is probably a little bit, in the toilet. And when that happens, your lenders are starting to pull back and tighten up and, tighten their guidelines. When, there are, the market is skyrocketing like it is right now. Deals are harder to find. So you have to spend more time on the acquisition side and picking things apart, but your money is much easier to find. Right now, I have and hopefully he doesn't watch this, but I have a mortgage broker, who's basically emailed me 3 times today to make sure that I was still moving forward with a deal. And I'm like, dude, I'm moving forward. But you can see the aggressive nature on his side, trying to making sure that I don't go to the competition because money is readily available right now. So you do have that inverse relationship between the two. Other times, let's call it a year ago today, right? I mean, we were a month about into the pandemic, and money had really tightened up. But deals, I wouldn't say they loosened up, but people are a little bit more like, hey, I don't know what's going on here, and I don't want this to ruin my retirement. I'm trying to get to Florida. Let's go ahead and sell. So there was a deal that we had where we bought in April of 2020, and it was absolutely a phenomenal deal. I mean, we're buying this thing and we're walking into it with equity, like you said, buying right on the front end. And we can't find a lender that wants to do this deal because all the lenders had pulled back because of, of the pandemic. So there's always that seesaw relationship that you have there. But to answer your question directly, there's always deals to be had.
Okay. So Willie, if anybody wants to reach out to you to find out about how they can be a part of Willie Mandrell's world in Boston, or just to share with you their secrets on how to get rid of roaches? Because I know some.
I would appreciate that.
Secret chemical from the Army Navy store that nobody's supposed to know about. So how can they find you and reach you?
Sure. The easiest way, I mean, you can Google Willie Mandrell. Don't Google Barber. Don't just Google Mandrell. You're going to end up with Barber at that point. Google Willie Mandrell. But the easiest way to get me is YouTube. You can follow me on, subscribe to my channel on youtube.com/W Mandrell. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, all the LinkedIn, all the social networks. I also run a networking group. We're in about 20 different cities, Wealth Builder Nation. The platform is meetup.com. If you go there and you Google Wealth Builder Nation, you'd come up and find our cities. We do a ton of webinars and educational events, something like what we're doing right now.
Well, give us a couple of quick insights into what is Wealth Builder Nation? Why did you start it? Why has it grown so quickly into 20 cities? What's the primary focus?
Wealth Builder Nation, I'll tell you, it started because I was lonely. It started because I wanted to do a lot of things. I'm 23 years old. I'm buying my first property. And, my friends and family members, frankly, weren't interested in that, right? I mean, when you're in your 20s, most of the people are thinking about the weekend. They're thinking about, how do I get through the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, so I can get to the weekend. I'm thinking about retirement at 23. For some reason, I'm not really sure why, but I mean, that's just how I was built. And there's a level of the loneliness that comes with that, because I'm trying to get to a place that's different than everyone else, or than most of the people that surround me. So I stumbled across meetup.com. And I'm naturally an introvert. I don't like going to networking events and tapping people on the shoulder and like, hey, I know you guys are already engaged in a conversation, but can I hop in here and can we chat? So I figured in my head, and it's worked out pretty well 8-9 years later, that if I started the group, everybody wants to meet the guy that's running the group or the girl that's running the group, right? So I decided to start my own, initially called it Boston Wealth Builders. We grew to about 33,000 members or so. And then just decided to take it nationally. So now we're in Chicago, Florida, Atlanta, a couple of different places, and it's growing rapidly. And we just do a lot of different educational events, webinars. We bring on other people from other cities. In most of those cities, I would say 12 of the 20, we have an actual boots on the ground person who is going to be running rehab tours and local events that are specific to that, specific city as well.
Okay, so I think all of y'all need to go check out what cities Willie's in. And if it's not in your city, you might want to ask him about being the lead source in your market, because that's absolutely a brilliant strategy for natural introverts to be the magnet instead of having to be the one to go out and do the work. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast and giving us, first of all, some insights into all the journeys available in real estate, telling us a story that's horrifying to everybody. Also giving some nuggets of wisdom to today's realtors and investors and people who are thinking about getting into that space. I'm very grateful for your willingness to share your knowledge and excited to continue connecting in the future.
No, I appreciate you having me on and giving me the opportunity to share it. So,
all right, friends, you're going to have some reason to comment, because you're going to have to tell Willie your secret on roaches. I'm comfortable with that. As long as you subscribe to the show. And if you think the man dropped some information, then give me the 5 stars, because you're going to go join his network. And I brought them to you so reward the sister, and make sure we'll come back and we'll see you next time. As always, I'm so super thrilled that you joined in for more crazy shit. And if you're a realtor, investor, inspector, lender, or just a regular human being who happens to have an unbelievable story that you need to tell the world about, or frankly, you just need to one-up the story you just heard, then make sure to DM me on Instagram at Leigh Thomas Brown, or tweet me at Leigh Brown, or frankly, any social network where you hang out. I'm there. And if you had some fun, then you totally want to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.